Yep, over here.
I'm not sure. I think my husband may consider it infidelity for me to be here this morning at the conference. I have to check with him when I get home. But from a public policy point of view, my understanding of marriage was that it was more contractual to bring together what a man's daughter would bring into the marriage with what would go to another man, and that the reason government was in marriage was for the contractual passing of property from one generation to another, from one family to another, including the daughter, and then eventually just the dowry that came with. And in those marriages, my understanding is there's not a demand that they procreate and have other children. It was a contract to bring the property together. And I didn't hear you mention that at all. And I'm curious about that.
Sure. So in the American context, that's not what marriage policy is about. So I didn't mention it because I don't actually think that's what the purpose of marriage is for, what the public policy purpose is for. It's true that in some societies in which you did have a strong emphasis on patriarchy and you had a strong emphasis on dowries and the joining of families, that marriage played that function. In our society, it largely hasn't. And I was talking about American marriage policy and why is the American state, both federal and the 50 states, in the marriage business. And it has much more to do with forming a stable community in which orderly procreation can take place.
And we know that the requirement of the marriage?
No, that's a good follow-up. No one has ever insisted that couples have to have children to be married. It's not that every marriage has a child, it's that every child has a mom and a dad. And that marriage tries to maximize the likelihood that that child will be raised by their mom and dad. And so the way that this works is that, one, it holds up an ideal that you should get married before you have kids in the first place. Second, you should stay married so that your kids have a mother and a father. That's what the state's trying to do with marriage. And so it's true that some marriages won't procreate, they won't have children. That does nothing to take away from the policy purpose of marriage, especially if even the infertile couple remains faithful to each other. It's very rare that we have infertility with both spouses. So let's say it's the wife who is infertile, but the husband remains faithful to her. He's not now creating fatherless kids and fragmented families with some other woman. So even in the case of the childless marriage, the public policy purpose of marriage is still being served by having that couple live out the truth about marriage.